So, good morning, members of the Board of Directors of Johnson & Johnson. We are the Navarra Consulting Group, and first of all, thank you for the opportunity of being here today in this snowy December morning of 2013, and for the opportunity of trying to solve and analyze the ASR hip implant problem. So, while we were coming here in the car, we were wondering, gosh, what makes you buy a certain hip implant? I mean, when you go to surgery, your surgeon comes and says, you need a hip implant. What makes me buy Johnson & Johnson hip implant, Zimmer's hip implant, or Stryker's hip implant? When I have to go and buy a drug for my children, what makes me buy Johnson & Johnson product and not another competitor's product? And the four of us, we had exactly the same answer. Trust, confidence, and respect. If you don't believe in the company whose product you're buying, you never give your children that product. You never buy their hip implant. Some of you may think that this whole hip implant thing is just a little thing. I mean, Johnson & Johnson is a 270 company family, over 60 countries in the world. This is just one product of one company. It's not important. It's not going to affect the trust people have in us. I think this is wrong. All over the news, people are wondering, how could Johnson & Johnson, the #1 pharmaceutical and medical device company in the world, sell defective hip implants? How could Johnson & Johnson make a settlement agreement that doesn't compensate properly their clients? Is Johnson & Johnson's corporate reputation going to suffer from this? So our opinion today is that yes. This is Fortune's Most Admired Companies Index. As you can see, before the hip implant scandal, we were one of the most trusted, respected, and admired companies in the whole world, always ranking in the top 5 positions. Today, we're in the 23rd position. So how could this happen, and how are we going to solve it? This is the agenda for today. I know you're very busy, that you direct a gigantic corporation, and that you can't know exactly how the products are approved, which are the problem each product has. So this is why today we bring with us our medical expert, Paula. Paula is going to drive you through the whole process of how the product was designed, the engineer, how it was approved, how it was commercialized, and what problems it gave to patients.
Thank you very much, Levico, and good morning. So today I will talk to you a little bit about some of the details of the implants we have been selling. And the PUI Synthes is one of the 270 companies of the Johnson & Johnson's family, and is the one in charge of putting the medical devices into the market. So we have been selling defective products that are harming people's health. And as you really could know, our credo is that our first responsibility is to patients and to people who buy our products. So in 2003, keeping with our innovation and leadership spirit, we put the metal-on-metal implants in the market, being actually one of the first ones to do so. We saw here both a great opportunity to help and improve people's quality of life, and also to grow in a new potential market. We have the opportunity to solve some of the people's problems, but what we are actually doing is creating them more problems. And what we did is that we rushed. We just wanted to save time and costs. We didn't perform the proper clinical trials that, even though we weren't supposed to do, maybe we should have done to know the potential risks that could occur from our implants. And in this case, we put our patient's health in the second place, when we normally, what we do is put it in the first place. So as you can see in the picture, this is a ceramic and plastic implant, and this is the new one, the metal-on-metal implants. We observed that some of the benefits of this type of implants were that they normally last longer, an average of 20 years against the 10 years of the traditional ones. Moreover, they have a higher resistance to wear and tear, and they allow a more intensive physical activity, so they were really good for young people, mainly. However, we also observed that some of the risks were that because they are made of metal, they can release metal debris to the organisms. Also, chromium and cobalt levels normally are higher, so this can cause toxicity and poisoning of the blood, and they cause bone fractures. So Johnson & Johnson introduced 2 implants, the ASR XL implant and the ASR Surface implant. In this picture you can see the XL implant is this one. It's all made of metal. This little part, the socket, will go to the pelvis, and the ball and the rod will go inside the shaft of the femur. So this one, with this product, what we did is we innovated in the material, because it's made of metal against the ceramic and plastic ones. And with this one, with the resurface implant, that is the second product we put in the market, we went one step further, and we developed this product that is, as you can see in the picture, this part is smaller, so it's less invasive, and the surgery is going to be different. And this is the previous one. So the FDA classifies both products as class 3 products, medical devices, and they are the riskier category. So there are two processes that you can follow in order to put them in the market. The first one is the pre-market approval process. Is the more rigorous and demanding process because you have to perform clinical trials. So then normally it takes 2 or 3 years to put the product in the market, and the costs are around $250,000. And on the other hand, we have the second path, that is the 510K. This process is more quicker because it doesn't require clinical trials. Here is the main difference, that you don't require clinical trials, and is also less expensive. So with this one, what you have to do is demonstrate that your implant, in this case your product, is substantially equivalent. And that means that it doesn't raise new safety issues, and is at least as safe and is at least as safe as the legally marketed implants and products. So we used this program to put the XL implant in the market, and this implant was being sold both overseas and in the United States. And for the second one, what we did is that we had to follow the pre-market approval process, and we finally didn't obtain the FDA approval, so this one was just being sold overseas, but not in the United States. So after 5 years, we are observing that the revision rate of these implants is around 12%, and our competitors' ones are around 4%, and they were supposed to be around 1%, so they are much higher. And they are causing people a lot of problems. For example, they are causing severe inflammation that can lead to bone, muscles, and soft tissue problems. And also, what is more important, they are making people have walking difficulties, and some of them are in wheelchairs, and also toxicity and bone fractures problems. So all these problems started appearing around 2008. Also, this was the time when the first lawsuit was fulfilled in the United States. And even though problems appear around this time, 2008, we didn't recall both implants until 2010. And now in 2013, we have signed our first settlement agreement, and also 93,000 patients in all the world have had this implant installed, and 1/3 of them are in the United States. And now our legal expert Alberto will explain you in more detail the settlement agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Good morning. Now we are going to analyze the problem from a legal point of view. As you know, some weeks ago, you announced the biggest settlement agreement for a medical device in the history of the United States. This settlement agreement is going to cost $2.2 billion. The market for hip implants is valued in $6 billion. So we are paying third part of the market value just to pay a small share of claimants. But the question is this a good way to compensate our patients? What have we done to reach this dramatic situation? When the implants started to cause problems, our first patients started to take our company to court. As a result of all this process, there was a first trial, the one we will call Kransky versus Johnson & Johnson, where we were ordered to pay $8.3 million. Kransky was a former prison guard from Montana that wanted to spend his retirement in sunny Los Angeles. He wanted to run after his grandchildren, but instead he found himself in a wheelchair due to the problems with the hip implant. Now he needs everyone's help for his daily life. He needs his daughters and his wife's help. As you can see in this picture, he needed their help to stand up and to testify and to listen to the verdict of the jury. We have worsened his quality of life. In the verdict, the jury states that we knew that there were problems in the design of the product, but they didn't recognize any punitive damages. What does this mean? That the jury believes that our act wasn't so horrible, wasn't so bad, as to set it as an example for following cases. We had, after this first trial, we had a second chance to compensate all the damage we have caused our patients. There were different alternatives, but we finally decided to launch an agreement settlement. So there are 3 requirements to be eligible for the settlement agreement. The first one is to be a United States citizen or resident. Then the second one, to have undergone an XL hip replacement surgery in the United States of America. And finally, to have undergone another revision surgery. What is a revision surgery? A revision surgery is a surgery when the hip implant that is causing problems, the one that is affected, is substituted with a new one. So this revision surgery has to meet with other 2 requirements. The first one, it has to take place before August 31st, 2013, and the second one is that the period of time between the first surgery and the revision surgery has to be at least of 180 days, that is to say 3 months. The settlement agreement is not an admission of any fault, of any wrongdoing, of any liability in the design, production, and distribution of the hip implants. On the other hand, it is not an admission of any lack of merit of the patients, of the claimants. Both parts believe that the process, the program, is a good, fair, and efficient method to solve their problems, and both parties act in good faith. There is a walkaway rights clause that will work when less than 94% of the potential eligible patients decide not to enroll this program. If this happens, our company, Johnson & Johnson, can decide unilaterally to finish the program. And the patients that finally enroll the program renounce to us to any punitive damages or legal rights they could have. So the program is divided in 2 parts, Part A and Part B. Part A is oriented for everyone that decides to enroll and that finally is accepted in the program. There is a base payment of $250,000 that can be reduced taking into consideration different factors, such as if the patient was a smoker at the time of the surgery or the patient has a body mass index higher than 35. There is a minimum payment of $150,000 and no patient would receive an amount lower than that. And then we have a Part B. A Part B that is aimed to people with special situations or extraordinary situations. The amount of money they take from this part would be added to the money from the Part A. So for example, in this Part B, we include for patients that had both hip implants implanted and replaced. So what are the main problems this settlement agreement has? First one, there will be a lot of uncovered patients because they don't meet the requirements to be eligible for the program. We estimate that in the United States, 3,500 people could be outside the program. And overseas, where the program is not working, this amount will be higher, would be 7,700 patients. There is a poor protection of the patients due to different factors, such as the walkaway rights or the lack of liability of our company, and the compensations are really low. We are paying on average $250,000 to each patient. That only covers for the medical expenses that have been recognized in the Kransky versus Johnson & Johnson case. So the main objective of this settlement agreement is not to pay as less as possible. The main objective of this settlement agreement is to offer our patients an efficient and effective method to solve the problems they could have with us. Moreover, it also will help to obtain or to recover the reputation we have lost. So that's why we think some improvement should be made in the agreement. However, it will also imply a really huge economical cost. So that's why our expert, Ludovico, is going to talk about it in more detail.
Thanks, Alberto. So now we're going to analyze the economical implications of the ASR hip implant scandal. Lots of people wonder when a big corporation misbehaves, does something wrong. In the end, they just fine them, but it's not money for them, and patients are suffering. With this economical part, we wanted to quantify what was the tangible economical cost of the project and the intangible, that is the corporate reputation lost by our company. So first, we decided to do a standard statement of earnings just for the hip implant project. So as you can see, we have actual sales and actual expenses. But as we have seen before, we have thousands of patients that are not covered by our settlement program and that are going to sue our company. So we have to quantify those potential costs in order to analyze all the economical implications. So please don't get confused by all these numbers. This is extremely simple. We have here that the 93,000 units we have sold at an average price of $8,000. And we deduct all the cost of goods sold, marketing and administrative expenses, and research and development, and the taxes. This is the average of the past 5 years for Johnson & Johnson. And we obtained that the net earnings for this project is $163 million. You think it's a lot? If we're talking about a $6 billion market, it's not a lot of money. Why? This kind of implants normally stay 20, 30 years in the market. Due to its engineering problems, we had to recall them. Only 8 years, after its introduction into the market. But this is not all. We also had a huge economical additional cost. First of all, a settlement agreement that is valued at $2.3 billion. Then we have the recall costs all over the world, informing patients, informing the doctors. That is almost $1 billion. And last but not least, we have the Kransky versus the Puy case. That is another $8.3 million. So in the end, we see that just the actual costs outnumber significantly the benefits of this project. But still, we have not finished. As we have seen before, there's a 12% revision rate. So we make a simple assumption. The people that are having problems with our implant are going to sue us. If you are buying an implant that is for your whole life and you have to substitute it after 5 years, you're angry. You're going to sue our company. So this leaves us with 3,500 potential claims only in the United States. How much are these claims going to cost our company? For this, we've done a simple game matrix. We assume that we can win a settlement or we can lose a settlement. Obviously, if we win, we don't have to pay money. There are some administrative or legal fees, but we assume zero. If we lose the settlement, we may be obliged to pay a quantity that is near the Kransky versus Johnson & Johnson case, or a quantity that is near the settlement we're paying, the compensation we're paying. So if we assume equal distribution, we can see that the actual value of the AFib matrix is $2.50 million per patient. If we multiply this times 3,500, we get another $7.5 billion. And still we cannot do this game matrix for all the overseas clients that are not covered because we have different legal agreements, different legal systems, and we don't have still any sentence, any pronunciation from a court, so we can do a game matrix. So as a consequence, we have seen that this has supposed a huge cost for a company, only from a tangible point of view. But is this all? Obviously not. What is, as I have said before, the most important asset of our company? Trust. This trust is measured by our corporate reputation. So we have used the RepTrack index of the Reputation Institute. The Reputation Institute, as you know, measures corporate reputation that enhances the financial performance of a company. So the RepTrack index measures every year 4 main pillars of the bond of trust between a stakeholder, between a consumer, for example, and the company. Overall feeling, esteem, admiration, and trust. As you can see here, there is a high correlation between companies that have a high RepTrack index score that goes from 0 to 100 and supportive behaviors, such as buying the product of that company, working for their company, investing their money in that company, or recommend it to friends and relatives. So, how are we doing in the RepTrack index? How have we performed in these years? Well, as we can see, before the settlement agreement, we were a top-tier company. RepTrack considers that company over 80 points are trusted and admired all over the world. After the settlement agreement and the whole scandal, we have lost 8.5% of our corporate reputation, and we still haven't recovered. So the conclusions are devastating. We have lost a huge amount of money. We can lose even $7.5 billion. Remember, the market is valued at 6. We're losing more money than the whole market valuation. And then, we're not anymore a trusted and respected company, and our reputation has suffered. Now, I'm going to leave you with Carmen, that is going to analyze the ethical implications of all this problem.
Thanks. So good morning. Now I'm going to talk about the ethical implications of our program. So well, in the past years, as we have seen and my colleagues have explained, we have faced different decisions. But is the path that we have taken always the ethical one? I mean, are we responsible ethically for the damages caused by our hip implants? Well, In order to answer this question, I would like to introduce the concept of human actions, because we are assuming that not every action can be judged from an ethical point of view. Only human actions can be. Meaning that human actions are those actions we know we are doing them, they are known, we do them freely, I mean there is no coaction or no other pressure to do so, and then we want to do them, they are voluntarily, meaning that we know the effects, the end and purpose of our actions. So well, can we say we are voluntarily doing the effects of our actions, meaning we are responsible for those effects? I mean, can we be held responsible for the effects cause of what we are doing? Well, it's all a matter of knowledge. It depends if those effects were foreseeable and avoidable, then definitely we are ethically responsible for them. And that's the concept of voluntary cause action, because we are doing voluntarily the action that causes that effect. Okay, so did we know? I mean, were we aware of the damages that will arise from hip implants? Well, we followed the legal path. I mean, we followed the legal procedures established, and we obtained the FDA and the overseas approval for our implants. Also, at the start, the high initial failure rate could have been due to the surgeon's lack of ability performing the surgery with a new kind of hip replacement system. And finally, when it was crystal clear that our products were the cause of those damages, we started a global recall program in August 2010. But, I mean, which sources of information we had available? Were we really unaware of what was going on with our hip implants? Well, we had both internal and external sources of information. Because when we designed our implants, there were mechanical tests conducted, meaning that there weren't any patients involved, but we did some tests, though, to design them. And also we had some external sources of information. There were reports sent to the FDA reporting the failures, and also there was some research done by the scientific community. So I would like to start by the internal information we had available. We did some tests, and Dr. Samaras, a medical engineer, testified on the Kransky versus Johnson & Johnson case, stating that there were internal tests conducted, and it was proof that the metal debris released by our hip implants was 16 times higher than other implants. So what we did then? I mean, we improved our implants, we changed them? No, we changed the test, so we will pass them. I mean, maybe we could say that we didn't knew what was going on with our test, that we are the board of directors, we are busy, but that information was made public on the trial of Kransky versus Johnson & Johnson in 2013, and we haven't accepted any wrongdoing or fault on our behalf. And well, then we had the external information we had available. 4 years previous to the recall, that was in 2010, there were more than 850 complaints sent to the FDA reporting failures, especially in 2009. So I mean, that should ring a bell for us. And also the scientific community conducted some research, and it was published in research papers, and they reported that our failure rate was at least twice higher than the failure rate of our competitors, and it was even 6 times higher than the failure rate that was considered acceptable by the FDA. But not only this, on August 2009, we received a letter from the FDA saying that they weren't going to approve the resurface implant that was already sold overseas to be sold in the States. And they said that they were concerned that it wasn't safe and that we needed to conduct more tests, more clinical tests. What we did then with that information, we didn't stop selling the implants, we just stopped producing them because there was a decline in sales, and we got rid of our inventory and sold it all overseas. And also in this letter, they didn't just say this, they expressed their concern about the high failure rate reported about our other implant that was commercialized in the States, the XL implant. And well, instead we waited 1 year to start our global recall program in 2010. So, did we know? Can we say we had no idea? I don't think we could say that, not at all. I mean, we had the internal test, We have the reports sent to the FDA, we have the papers done by the scientific community, and we have the FDA no-approval letter. So definitely we know what was going on. So we have the knowledge, and those effects could have been avoidable if we had behaved differently. And definitely we have to say we are ethically responsible for them. So now, what are we going to do? Ludovico is going to give us some recommendations.
Thanks again. So, part of our work is not only to analyze the problem, but also to propose solutions and recommendations. So, during all this presentation, I've heard the word opportunity. Opportunity of gaining a huge market, opportunity of changing people's lives, opportunity of doing things right and recall a product when it doesn't work, opportunity of compensating property of clients with a settlement agreement that is fair and that compensates them for all the pain they have suffered. But still, we have an opportunity to change. Even if we have missed all the other opportunities, we still have one. We have to change things. But change, I always think, has to come from somewhere. It has to be born somewhere. This is a picture of downstairs in your hallway. This is the worldwide famous credo of Johnson & Johnson, engraved at your entrance with a US flag beneath it. This credo states that the most important stakeholders of the company are its patients, and that we must make the most high-quality products just for them. So from here, we have to start again. And our recommendations have to start from here. If the credo is just something beautifully engraved in a wall, and it's not something that lives in the hearts and in the souls of all the workers of our company, our recommendations will be useful. So we have 4 main recommendations. The first one regards clinical trials. Doesn't matter, the FDA doesn't require any clinical trials for a certain kind of product. We are the #1 medical device company. We change people's life. We have to test clinically all our products. We can do it, and you have to ensure we do it. 2 more points regarding the settlement agreement. First of all, doesn't matter how much time the implant was in your body. Doesn't matter your body mass index. Doesn't matter if you're a smoker. If you had a problem with your implant, you have to be properly compensated. Requirements can be so strict. Another recommendation regarding the settlement program. The compensation is too low. It only covers medical costs. What about the pain suffered? The families that have been with all the people that have revision surgeries. They're extremely expensive. We have to recognize compensatory costs. So if we take together these 2 measures, not only are we doing the right thing, but we're saving billions of dollars. Last but not least, you have culture protocols. Johnson & Johnson, as I've said 3 times, I think, is an enormous company. Each year, new companies join our family. Last year, for example, we bought Synthes, that is a producer of medical implants for sports, for high competition sports. When we buy one of these companies, when we hire someone, when we design a new product, we have to ensure that the culture, the ethical culture of our company, our credo, as I have said before, comes live in that company. So we have to establish the proper channel so this new worker, this new supplier, this new product respects our credo. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so now we need to reset. You know what the problem is? We still have
It was easier to do the presentation than use this, this device.
Actually, I know how to do that one. Let me just clear this one. Okay. So now we're going into number 2. Just get this one set up. So I'll do this one manually. This one's got a problem because it hadn't run out. It's good, it's working now, thank you. Okay, so let me start off by asking a question. Carmen asked a question rhetorically. Are we responsible versus can we be held accountable? And clearly, courts have already held us accountable as a board. I'm having a little trouble with something, the 2 parts of Ludovico's presentation. In part 1, it was established that notwithstanding a very relatively low compensation amount per individual, we were still breaking the bank vis-a-vis what this item produced for us. So we're in the red. In the final part of your presentation, the solutions part, you said that we should not limit ourselves to compensatory damages, that a court has awarded that we should instead perceive some of this as possibly not punitive, but what we would call liquidated damages or pain and suffering damages. Okay, but that wasn't quantified. What's our ethical responsibility? Are we doing this on an absolute basis for pain and suffering, or are we doing it in a morally relativistic way by assigning an amount that's in our best interest, that's not going to kill us in terms of the number of plaintiffs, which is relatively low? Do we throw in an extra $100,000 and call it a day? Or do we really, or do we say that suffering is worth much more? What's your position on that?
So first of all, I have to ask you pardon, because I think I missed one of my points in the conclusion.
Okay.
So first of all, it's not only a matter of money. Okay, we have to recognize liability. I mean, people not only need an extra $100,000 or maybe $200,000 or maybe $8 million. They need to know we did things wrong. So I think it's here, liability recognition. Sorry, I jumped in.
So you're recommending that we can
Obviously, we have to make a public statement recognizing we engineered this product with a flaw. We didn't do the proper clinical trials, and we should have made their global recall program way before the time we did it. Still, we consider that, first of all, many patients are not covered by the program, as we have seen, because the requirements are pretty strict, because, I mean, you have to be a US citizen, you have to have the implant at least 180 days, certain body mass index. There are a lot of requirements. I mean, we had a hard time analyzing them. So, first of all, it has to be extended. I mean, all the US patients, at least, should be covered, because we did things wrong. We're recognizing liability, and compensation should be extended. So, as I said, this will save us billions of dollars. So you can think, well, something's going wrong here, because we're extending it to more people, we're giving them more money, and still we're saving money. It's not a matter of saving money, but we also have to look at the economical part. So here, I know the math is a little bit messy, but here we're recognizing new compensatory costs of $200,000 per patient. So now the total reward on average is $500,000. Now we're talking of something that really compensates patients. So instead of covering only let's say 8,000 lawsuits, we cover all the US patients that are having problems. And now the total cost of this new settlement is $5.6 billion. That is way lower, $7.6 billion than it was before. How can it be lower? Because if we go to trial with each one of the patients, we can lose a lot of money, a lot of costs, and a lot of time.
What is the ethics? What's the ethical obligation if you still keep in that 95% to opt-in? In the original program, 95% of potential plaintiffs have to opt in. Now, I'm going to tell you...
With the requirements.
With the requirements. Well, even if we take away the requirements, you have a number, 95%. All it takes is one big class action lawyer in the United States to harness up a bunch of plaintiffs to say, don't go into this, I can get you so much more, look at the verdict in the one case. So we're talking about a program that you're suggesting that we adopt. But what's the ethics of adopting a program that has a potentially very low risk of succeeding because you can't control plaintiffs?
Well, the walk away right clause is unilateral. I mean, Johnson & Johnson can walk away if 95% of potential clients.
Ethically, should we dump the walk away?
We consider that if we reach this settlement amount, most of the clients will adhere.
The thing is...
So should we opt away from it? Should we get rid of the opt-out?
Yes. Maybe, but the thing is that...
No, don't tell me maybe.
Well,
we're going to make a decision, the five of us.
I was trying to be more precise in the sense that, I mean, we are a family of companies, but that means that this product was designed by the IBECC, not by Johnson & Johnson. So we are not directly, legally responsible for the damages caused. I mean, you cannot say Johnson & Johnson is legally responsible and can be asked to pay for those damages, just the IBECC. And the IBECC, I'm pretty sure it has a number of sales and benefits that are way lower than Johnson & Johnson. So we are offering them to make sure that they will receive a compensation. But instead, if they want to go the legal way, we have reasons to say that we are not bonded to that.
I will talk to you later about what's called enterprise liability in the federal courts of the United States, but I want to give other people the opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, so my question, I guess, would go to Paula. What did we miss as a company in our clinical trials? I mean, what happened? How did we miss this?
Okay, when we saw this is that we think that Johnson & Johnson, what it did is that the FDA approved a program that allowed companies to put their products in the market sooner because they didn't have to perform clinical trials. They just, instead of following a more rigorous and demanding process like with the pre-market approval and doing all the steps and clinical trials, the FDA said, if you demonstrate me that is substantially equivalent, I think the problem was with the concept of substantially equivalent. That was like a kind of loophole because it allowed companies.
So instead of safe and effective, substantial equivalent.
Yeah, saying that they were, but not maybe doing the proper clinical trials to know all the risks that could appear from that. Yes.
Take that a step further. Not only did we miss it, we ignored what was going on. A company that has, what everyone I think would agree, reasonable people would say, has very high ethical standards before this became an issue. Where was this and why wasn't it picked up? Well, why didn't we do something about it once we knew it was wrong and it was failing?
When we're in role, or maybe it can be phrased differently.
So as a member of the board, I'm interested to know if they got cooperation in the corporation or not.
We didn't contact directly Johnson & Johnson. We had some help for example, this is a little bit informal, but there's a Facebook group called ASR Hip Survival, so you can check it out. There's a lot of people there. They were really nice. They told us their experiences, their problems with the hip implant, the problems with their settlement. Lots of people think the settlement is real unfair because in the United States, health is really expensive. This kind of surgery can go thousands of dollars. You have to take two surgeries, one to make the implant and another revision surgery. So if you get $175,000, that does not even cover the medical costs. But we didn't contact nobody at Johnson & Johnson.
Thank you.
So 2 questions. The first one is, if you offered the revision, why would people, are we offering them to replace it with the plastic, or is that not even an option? Then the second one is the number you showed, which is 11,000 something. Is that just U.S. patients?
Now I don't know which number.
Keep
In the
going.
economic part of
Keep
the
going up. 3,500, 11,000. That may have been the international.
Oh, maybe here. I know where we are. Here?
No.
No.
Very interesting.
No, it was on the upper right-hand
That's
side.
your N of patients, yeah.
Yeah.
Percentage.
To answer the first question, I think they are going to
There.
replace them with ceramic and plastic because metal on metal ones they are making
And
people
it's really
have
much
trouble.
problem.
Yeah.
And even lots of people in the Facebook group told us that not even by dream another Johnson & Johnson hip implant. We're going to put Zimmer or Stryker or another brand.
So that I guess that gets you to the 11,000,
11,200.
but
Yeah.
Yeah,
This number?
but is that includes everybody, or is it? I mean, it says uncovered patients. So how many did we cover? I want to know the total
Okay,
number.
we can do them. Okay, I can tell it to you. It's easier. So we have 93,000 patients all over the world. 1/3 in the United States. This is the geographical distribution of the implants. Okay, so we all for calculating these numbers, we made the assumption that only revised patients claim, which is a normal assumption. So if the revision rate is 12%, Johnson & Johnson estimates that about 8,000 patients, I think that 7,700 patients will be covered by the settlement agreement. So if we do the math, we get this number of uncovered US patients. And if we assume that we have 40,000 patients, for example, in Europe, we can multiply that times 0.12 and get the European uncovered patients. We did that also for Australia, for New Zealand, and we get this. Obviously, it's an assumption because we have, I'm going to go a little bit out of role here. We've done this presentation like the week before, after the settlement agreement was approved. But now, this was in 2013. Now we have 1 more year. So now scientific papers are analyzing the impact of the hip implants 6 years after its introduction into the market. So now the revision rate is not 12%, it's like 30%. So each year it goes worse, it goes worse.
And all the patients are 93,000, so maybe that would
So
be
this number is conservative.
Well, and just in fairness to you, now that you've explained it that way, because there were a number of slides, it does appear that you are accounting for patients overseas, right? When you talk about your number in terms of your recommendation.
No, we don't have in the $7.5 billion, there's no US patients.
But you have a number though, you had 11,000, or didn't you, where's that number
you go
that you?
back?
Yes, because this number, okay,
This is
sorry,
confusing.
I got it. Okay, no problem. We explain this. Let me see. Sorry. Okay, we'll do it again.
Would like, right there.
Here we have this, right?
Yes.
So if we add the 8,000 patients that are covered by the settlement agreement and we extend our settlement to all the US affected patients, that's 8,000 plus 7,700 plus 3,500. That's 11,200.
So it's only US.
Only US. Yes.
But then we recommend you that to take into account the people overseas too. So
But that's not part of this.
No, this is not part of it because we don't have
settlement here.
the
The
game.
legal systems are different, so we don't have any reference in order to calculate the
For
possible
their
compensation.
drivers.
Once again, for example, in Europe, recognizing 8 million of compensatory costs, possible.
Right.
Impossible.
Right.
Never. I mean.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, thank you for the presentation. What we're going to do now is go down the table and we're going to give you our comments as to the presentation. I have to tell you, I always love to see a group where everybody is equally strong. That's just one of my biases. And I think you did that very well. I also have to say that I hate bells and whistles on PowerPoint. I thought the fact that these were clean and crisp and clear was excellent. When people put on these fancy PowerPoint shows, I always wonder why are we rewarding that as opposed to the substance of the presentation. I thought that there were two things that would have strengthened your presentation that weren't included. It came out parenthetically in the questioning, but these were very, very powerful things. Number one was the email stream, that someone from Dupree is writing to Johnson & Johnson management and saying things that had such grave implications in the case that I don't know why you didn't lead with that as to where that leaves us ethically and where that leaves us, in terms of possibly educating our own management as to how do you, this is why we're compliance officers. Communication is from the point of view of how you mitigate your damages and don't expose yourself. But where is the management's level of integrity in making the statement that she did? And maybe this is not what our corporate culture should be internally. I also thought that what came out in response to Steve's question, where do we stand in this regarding other settlements that have happened? And do we act in a certain way because we have a limited class of potential plaintiffs versus a very big class, a la Tylenol, and we have a weak class of plaintiffs to the extent that we have old people who were weak and they may even die of consequences, and then their family has very little basis for a cause of action, frankly. So does that give us a heightened responsibility to the elderly? Or can we just say, you know what, they would have died anyway, so we're not as culpable, which is something you sort of were getting into and got off of. So those are my comments. I think you did a very good job, because I was watching the clock here, of balancing the presentation. You actually spent a third of the time on ethics, at least, before we even got to Q&A, and I thought that was pretty good, because a lot of people will devote 5 minutes to ethics. So anyway, congratulations. We'll go.
Yeah, I'll keep it very, very short. You really did come across as graduate students. I really did appreciate, I thought, kind of the parity in presentation. I think you really owned your presentation. I thought you tended to each of those considerations, and I think you spent the most time in the area that is the most important. I thought your recommendations came through. Be prepared, even though we were enrolled here as directors, a serious amount of pushback from the financial standpoint. I mean, this whole time I'm seeing this, I'm looking at you as a consultant saying, are you serious that what you're proposing here from a financial standpoint? I mean, I'm not saying it's not the right thing, but it's a very profound recommendation that you're putting forward. So I just want you to be prepared for that. The only other thing I would say is that I thought you held up really good to the Q&A. You know, I thought that there were a few moments there where there were some nerves, and that's okay, but I liked how you huddled, and I thought that showed real unity, yeah, you know, with the group. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Just a couple of comments. One, I like the way you work together a lot. I would like to have seen more on the financial side, particularly internationally, because I'm putting your words back to you, okay? We think we know 7,700 or whatever it is internationally, but it's probably 77,000, not 7,700, because the case is in the States, it's not internationally, it doesn't have that kind of attention. People probably haven't reported it, or the doctor didn't report it. So the potential liability is far more significant than anything I saw on the chart. That's my sense.
I mean, losing $10 billion.
Yeah.
It's a serious issue. I mean,
So-
but still, obviously, overseas claims, and I repeat, we all base everything that 12% is the revision rate. Nowadays, it's far away 30%. So those numbers go up.
But essentially what you gave us was, here is the US solution, right?
Right.
The thing
More
is,
focus on the
there
US.
was a lot of information on the case.
And I wanted to hear the potential liability from
Overseas.
the viewpoint.
Yeah, the thing is, he clearly said that we weren't going to calculate or try to value the potential liability overseas due to the differences in the regulatory
legal
system,
system.
the legal
Yeah.
system.
So
We decided
maybe,
to focus.
maybe just a little more recognition of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And just really, privately, I hope that the board and the company, it isn't found out later, did what I would be very fearful of, and that is that there was a real benefit cost analysis to the potential litigant, the potential people that would sue.
We figured out what we could get away with.
Right. Knowing that segment, knowing past history, and knowing, and basically assigning values to the risks, I privately
The
hope.
nature of the legal
To
system.
the health.
But from a
Assigning a
business
value to the health of
standpoint- From a
someone.
business standpoint,
Yeah.
from an actuarial standpoint, I really do hope that did not happen, because we've already seen what's happening
The
with other
consequences.
companies. GM is getting queued up right now, and the list is long, so.
So,
Thank you.
I think you guys work great together, and for English not being your language, you were very articulate. I could understand, and so I'm very, it was.
We're happy to hear that.
Yeah. You know, the only comment I would have is, Carmen, you tended to move
I know.
around, so I was like following your movement versus like really following your words.
It's good for a jury, by the way.
So that's the only thing I would suggest is you try to, I tend to do that too, so, but just if you can, because I think you guys are doing like 10 minutes and whatever
Yes.
sessions, and yeah, and it's a little bit of a distraction.
Who's doing the 90 second, by the way? Okay, because the 90 second, you're going to be sitting down when you present.
He's going to hate that.
Yes, yes.
You can sit down?
That you're all going to be, apparently, it's going to be sitting down specifically to focus on the words and not on the movement.
That's a great bias in my show.
You get to practice tonight.
That'll be fine.
And you know, most, when you present to like senior executives and board, you mostly sit
down, yeah.
and-
Yeah,
So that gives you a good perspective. But otherwise, I think you guys did great. And the only other comment I had is I lived in South Brunswick, New Jersey. So I grew up out right with Johnson & Johnson. My family worked for Johnson & Johnson. And with the Tylenol, when it happened, there was a huge layoff. So a lot of people who worked for, that lived where my neighbors were laid off because of the Tylenol scandal and things like that. Is there an impact into that? Because, I've since moved out of South Brunswick, so.
I don't know for the workers, but for example, the former CEO of Johnson & Johnson because, this is not an excuse, but all the email thing, it's leaked. New York Times got it.
Yeah.
It's not legal. So I thought it was a little bit of unethical basing everything on a leaked email. That's my point of view. because, I mean, I'm not doubting here of New York Times, but
Yeah, as a board, we need to know that though.
Yeah, fairly important.
I mean, it's very important as a board. It's not what's legal versus what's.
yeah, but we're talking about ethics here, and I'm basing everything on the email.
But if
But
you're
it's
advising us as a
perception.
board to make
You
sure
need
that
to
we're
know
going
what
to
to
know
do.
what's happening in the
In your
public, it's important.
Right.
Yeah, so actually having served as secretary for the Public Policy and Compliance Committee for our board of directors, I will say that you did an outstanding job, each and every one of you, from a presentation skills and particularly from a leadership presence perspective. You did as well as I've actually seen senior executives
Oh,
with their report.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you did extremely well with that, and you should be very proud, particularly given that English is your second language. And that's an important point, because one of the statements, I'll come back to this, at my company, every geography that we have a product registered, we do business in, we do have at least one ethics and compliance professional. And that has become industry standard because there have been so many lessons learned and failures. So that's changed very rapidly over the last 5 to 6 years, but it has happened. But your presentation was clear, it was focused, and I thought you did an outstanding job. What I would have liked to have seen was a summary very clearly from an ethical perspective of the global impact of a settlement in the US, and then the next step of that being a global impact of a settlement globally financially, and then to tie that to the fact that there are multiple operating companies underneath of Johnson & Johnson that have had recent settlements. So we have established a trend that we need to be acutely aware of as a board of directors. And when you're bringing these pieces together, how do you advise us and help to ensure that we understand everything going on externally within our company? Because we don't know, as the board of directors, all of these details. We can work very diligently to do it, but we rely upon you to bring that information to us. So, we would look at that. I think the other thing to think about is what we do going forward, particularly from this financial impact, is with these hip implants remaining OUS, the OUS failures will be reported as product complaints because of the FDA and the EMEA. They coordinate all of the adverse event or product complaint reporting, so that goes into a global database and the signaling comes in. So at some point, we're going to have to address this, and we're going to have to address it on a global manner. So it's very important that we do that. So, those are just the points I wanted to make sure that I was able to share with you, but very, very nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to your advisor as well. Boy, I think I probably had sweaty palms. But he's very proud of you. You can see it on his face.
One last comment. I was born here, but I'm told that English must be my second language.
Let's speak that way. Our English is okay.
It's outstanding.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.